After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party backfired, landing her in jail and ultimately leading to her divorce. I'm a 29-year-old woman, married to Harry for the last 7 years, and aside from his sister Kayla, who consistently brings negativity into our lives, I love everything about our marriage. When I first met Kayla, I liked her, but over time, my opinion changed drastically. She's toxic, manipulative, and relentlessly negative. Knowing who she is, I've worked hard to stay on her good side over the years. Harry had dated Kayla's best friend when he was 17, but they broke up because he felt pressured into the relationship. Later, when Harry turned 23 and found himself single again, Kayla tried to set him up with another one of her friends. Harry didn't agree, and Kayla ran to their parents, complaining that she wanted him to marry someone she was comfortable with. Their parents didn't listen to her, and their conflict only grew while Harry and I were falling in love. Though his parents were supportive, Kayla treated me coldly. She would often bring up Harry's exes for no reason, reminding him how well they were doing and suggesting he reconnect with them. Harry found this odd and asked her to stop, but she only became angry, mocking me and claiming I was jealous. She even invited one of Harry's exes to family dinners, pretending it was a coincidence and saying she had just run into them. Kayla doesn't follow me, but she checks my Instagram constantly. Since my account is public, I noticed she's often the first to view my stories. If a man comments on my pictures, she goes to Harry, accusing me of posting inappropriate content. Harry and I laugh at her accusations. She even tried to convince Harry to break up with me when we decided to live together, telling him I had many flaws and that she could find someone better for him. That comment really hurt. Things got worse after Harry and I got engaged. When we shared the news, everyone was thrilled, but Kayla was strangely silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, she suddenly stood up and left. Later, she called Harry, crying and yelling that she should have been the first to know, as she considered herself his closest person. She even messaged me almost threateningly about how I should treat her brother, as she'd always been the only woman in his life. I found her message unsettling, so I didn't respond, leaving it unread, which I knew would upset her. From that point on, whenever Kayla saw me, she deliberately ignored me, but she still stayed involved in the wedding planning. She attended events like dress shopping and my bridal shower. Both my future mother-in-law and Harry confronted her about her behavior, but she only escalated her criticism of the wedding. She would openly mock my choices. One day, while discussing the wedding centerpiece with my future mother-in-law, Kayla overheard and immediately ridiculed me, calling my choice tacky and saying it was exactly why she wanted Harry to marry someone better than me. That was the breaking point. I snapped and told her she was no longer welcome at the wedding. I yelled that I couldn't tolerate her constant criticism anymore. She was shocked, and for the first time she was speechless. Kayla was furious and called Harry, complaining that I had embarrassed her and insisting he should control me since we were about to marry. Harry made it clear he supported my decision and that Kayla would only be invited if she changed her behavior. Reluctantly, she sent me a half-hearted apology, which I saw and left unread again. At that point, I was exhausted from all the wedding stress and didn't want to engage with her drama. In the end, Kayla did attend our wedding, but it was clear she was there only to criticize. While everyone else wore pink and pastels, Kayla showed up in a black, floor-length gown with a veil, as though she were attending a funeral. To say we were stunned is an understatement. At the reception, Kayla made it clear she was mourning the loss of her brother to another woman. Harry confronted her about her outfit, saying she had the right to wear whatever she wanted, but I was being too controlling. She tried to paint herself as the victim, and when she continued to make a scene, my mother-in-law and father-in-law stepped in and ordered her to leave. It has been embarrassing ever since. I avoid her and keep her away from our child. When I gave birth to our son, Nate, she tried to oppose it, but Harry's parents had my back. They supported my decision to keep her away from our baby, knowing exactly why I didn't want her near him. 2 years ago, she suffered a miscarriage with her then-boyfriend, Jamie, and it deeply affected her. It was a painful time for everyone, considering our own struggles with starting a family. Harry and I sympathized with her, so we decided to be more lenient after her loss. We allowed her to connect with Nate, and at first she seemed to have changed. But over time, she slipped back into her old ways. She constantly complains about how difficult her life is, blaming ex-friends and employers for her misfortunes. I've realized she's never wrong in her eyes. She's always playing the victim, trying to turn others against people she dislikes, and she rarely acknowledges any of her own faults in confrontations. She decided to get married this year and invited everyone to save the date, as her relationship with us seemed to have improved. Harry was surprised when we weren't invited. She then explained that she couldn't allow me to attend because it would cause a disturbance at her wedding. When we questioned her, having never wronged her, I called to ask why she thought that. Kayla explained that she had deliberately worn all black to our wedding, and now she feared I might do the same, which was why she wanted me kept off-site. I told my husband plainly how manipulative she was, and he was furious. After discussing it with his parents, Harry decided to let his sister know they would neither be attending the wedding nor contributing financially. This reduced her to tears, and she blamed me for the fallout. Her husband stepped in, telling her she had no right to point fingers, as she had admitted to her own mistake. Kayla, however, dismissed her actions, saying I should just get over it since our wedding was long past. Later, she called me to apologize and ask for forgiveness, as FIL and MAL still refused to pay for her wedding. Though I hated to admit it, Kayla could be very charming and persuasive when she wanted something. Wanting to move on from the past, I forgave her. Her wedding to Jamie went off without a hitch, and we all had a good time. Less than 6 months later, Kayla showed up at our door, complaining about her failing marriage. We let her stay with us for a few days, where she vented about Jamie endlessly. They were struggling to conceive, and Kayla was blaming Jamie for everything. When I tried to talk to her, she insisted it was entirely his fault. She became fixated on our lives, often inventing things that weren't true. For instance, every morning before heading to work, I go to the gym. When I'm running late, I sometimes grab my work clothes to shower and change after my workout. Kayla noticed this and asked many questions, including why I was showering or why I needed to go to the gym. I told her it was to keep my weight in check and because I didn't want to go to work sweaty. She would nod and lick her lips. At lunch one day, MAL was telling us about a friend of hers who had left her husband after discovering his infidelity and taken half of his assets. Kayla interrupted to ask Harry if we had signed a prenup before getting married. We stopped eating, staring at her. She waited expectantly, as if I hadn't even been there. Harry responded bluntly that neither of us had felt the need for prenup since we both made good money. Kayla scoffed, claiming he could be blindsided at any time by cheaters. Her words offended me, so I asked her to clarify. She then suggested I was obviously seeing someone, since I always carried a change of clothes. She said it was her duty as Harry's sister to warn him. I was shocked by her remarks. FIL and MAL quickly intervened, advising her not to meddle in other people's lives. But Kayla continued, saying she was only trying to look out for her brother and even joked about whether our son, Nate, was truly Harry's since he didn't look much like him. I watched the anger rise on my husband's face. I had never seen him so enraged. He looked her squarely in the eye and told her that she wasn't a mother and didn't deserve to be one, suggesting her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla was left stunned, her mouth hanging open. MAL and FIL said nothing as Harry stormed out. Kayla started complaining, calling herself a failure who was trying to ruin everything because her life had nothing to offer. She was just a loser while Jamie worked nonstop. He kept saying she was projecting her own issues onto me and should focus on her own marriage. Reduced to tears, Kayla sobbed, expecting sympathy. She turned to Jamie, but he remained silent. My husband had never shown this kind of breakdown. Kayla eventually ran to the bathroom, still crying. Harry was seething. I tried to calm him down as MAL arrived to help, understanding how exhausting Kayla could be. I nodded in agreement, grateful Harry had stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie but ignored Kayla once he cooled off. After lunch, we had no further interaction with her. Her actions had hurt both me and my husband. We decided to distance ourselves and let her reach out when she was ready. MIL and FIL agreed that Kayla had crossed the line. They recognized how their usually quiet son had snapped after Kayla's constant provocations. We haven't spoken to her in over a year, and things have been peaceful since. 2 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. It was a complete surprise as we hadn't been trying. We felt blessed to welcome another family member and planned to share the news on Harry's birthday, waiting for the right moment. To celebrate, MIL and FIL hosted a wonderful party in their yard, inviting close friends and family. Kayla showed up uninvited after hearing about the event. My husband and I were taken aback. She approached Harry, hugging him and apologizing for their last conversation, saying how much she had missed him. She then took my hand and, with a serious expression, told Harry he should hear her apology for how she had treated me. Kayla acknowledged how inappropriate her actions had been and explained she had been in therapy for the past few months. Despite disagreeing with her, I nodded politely, as it was important for Harry's sake, and we were in a public setting. ML and FAL checked in, offering to ask Kayla to leave if we felt uncomfortable, as they hadn't known she would be coming. Harry, however, insisted on avoiding any drama, so we chose to let it go. It struck me as odd that SAL was laughing and mingling with everyone during the celebration. She mentioned attending therapy, so I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt, even though her overly optimistic demeanor seemed out of character. Harry spoke from the heart, telling everyone he felt like the luckiest man alive, grateful for another year with someone like me. When it came time to cut the cake, his words made me flush with happiness, reminding me of the early days of our relationship. I couldn't help but appreciate the love Harry and I still shared. Then we decided it was time to share some wonderful news. Smiling, we announced that we were expecting a baby, and the room fell silent for a moment before erupting in cheers. My mother rushed over, hugging me and crying tears of joy, while FL saluted Harry and me, his face wet with emotion. Everyone eagerly asked if we'd chosen a name, clearly thrilled for us. But then there was SIL. She stood out like a sore thumb. She looked shocked, her mood quickly shifting to irritation. I assumed she might just be processing things slowly, but I was a bit concerned, worried she might spoil the moment as she had in the past. I was distracted as others came over to chat, and when I stood up to help my in-laws with lunch, Rick and my parents urged me to stay seated. At that moment, SIL approached, beaming with enthusiasm, and said she wanted to personally serve me dinner, thrilled about my pregnancy. She handed me a plate, telling me it was her way of making up for the times she had been unpleasant to me. I nodded politely, accepting her gesture. She smiled and walked away. Just as I was about to start eating, I noticed she had put shrimp on the plate. I am allergic to shrimp, so I was surprised that SIL would give me a dish containing it. Disappointed, I shook my head and stood up to get my own food. Jamie came over, wishing me well on my pregnancy, and after a brief chat, he noticed I hadn't started eating. When I explained the shrimp situation, he reassured me not to worry and took the plate from my hands, saying he could eat it since he enjoyed shrimp. I nodded and smiled, but then, to my shock, Jamie suddenly began gagging and vomiting violently. Within moments, everyone stopped eating, staring in alarm as he stumbled to his feet, clutching his throat. Harry and Kayla rushed to him and Jamie gestured at the plate before pointing to his throat. It dawned on us that something was seriously wrong with the food. Jamie passed out, and the room was filled with gasps of worry. Kayla quickly checked his plate and looked horrified. She turned to me and asked if I had handed him the plate. I nodded, and someone immediately called for an ambulance. Amid the chaos, Jamie was rushed to the hospital, while Kayla sobbed uncontrollably, glaring at me. We later learned that Jamie had been poisoned. Hearing this was a shock, and I nearly fainted. The plate that Jamie had eaten from was mine, and I couldn't shake the fear that whatever had been in that food could have harmed my baby as well. At the time, Harry, MIL, FIL, and my parents had no idea what had happened. The police were called to investigate, and Jamie remained in the hospital while recovering. Kayla stayed by his side, and family members began calling to ask what had happened and who might have poisoned him. My husband and I are fielding calls, trying to understand how everything went so wrong so suddenly. Mal and Fil are staying with us now, afraid to return to their own house. I told everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and that Sil had served it to me, which has left me terrified. If this becomes an investigation, I will have to tell the truth to the authorities. Right now, my biggest concern is what my sister-in-law might do next. I'm deeply upset by everything that's transpired and no longer want to be around her. I don't want to bring my kids anywhere near her, given how she seems willing to go to extreme lengths to hurt me. I feel guilty for handing Jamie my plate, even though I didn't know it was contaminated. Update 1. Wow. Thank you all for the overwhelming response to my post in just a few hours. I never imagined I would get so many comments. When I wrote this earlier, my hands were shaking, and I haven't been able to sleep. I do feel some responsibility for what happened with the plate. I should have just discarded it when I saw the shrimp. I'm not sure why I allowed Jamie to take it from me. I keep crying, especially thinking about Jamie's future and wondering what went wrong. My husband has been staying close to me, though he doesn't know what I suspect about his sister. He thinks I'm just worried. I agree with the advice to have a calm discussion with everyone, though I'm not sure they'll believe me. Mil and Fil have security cameras all around their house, so I'm confident they can check the footage and confirm that Kayla handed me the plate. I'll speak to everyone tonight. Update 2. We had a conversation, and I'm beyond grateful to have the most wonderful in-laws on earth. Mill and Phil are staying with us, so I sat down with Harry and them over dinner to share something important. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Everyone gathered around, and I told them about the birthday party, including how Sil handed me a plate of prawns, which Jamie unknowingly ate, causing his illness. The shock and disbelief on their faces mirrored my own. Mill and Phil exchanged worried glances, and Harry's expression shifted from confusion to anger. I continued by voicing my concerns about Sil's intentions and her past attempts to harm me, emphasizing the potential consequences for both myself and our unborn child. I hesitated to reveal this, but Mill, being the practical woman she is, suggested we look at the security footage. Given the seriousness of the situation, Phil nodded in agreement, though he was clearly furious. Harry remained quiet, processing the shocking information. Watching the footage from the security camera app, the evidence was undeniable. The video clearly showed Sil presenting the poison plate to me, and then the consequences of Jamie eating it. The facts left no room for doubt, and the reality of it all hit us hard. Now fully aware of his sister's malicious intentions, Harry struggled to contain his fury. Mill and Phil were appalled by their daughter's actions and the extent of her cruelty. We were all left in stunned silence, trying to understand why she would go this far. Given the gravity of the situation, my in-laws decided to forward the evidence to the police. As a result, Jamie will be the one to press charges against Sil, and Phil and Harry will meet with him once he has recovered. I feel an overwhelming sense of guilt every time I think about handing Jamie the poison plate. I have no idea how he'll react, and I'm terrified. I can't seem to eat or sleep properly. I'll keep you updated on anything significant. Update 3. Alright, everyone, I'm back with an update, though I know it's been a month since my last one. Right now, I'm a pregnant woman dealing with a lot. First things first. After seeing the proof, she was arrested. My in-laws handed the recording to the police, and Kayla confessed immediately without contest. She broke down in tears. Jamie was just as shocked as we were when my husband confronted him about what had happened. He told him that no matter what, he would always be part of our family. My husband then encouraged him to press charges against his sister, given the severity of her actions. After Jamie recovered, he not only chose to press charges but also filed for divorce. Kayla, desperate and pleading for forgiveness, called Mill and Phil. Turns out, she's pregnant herself. She tried to manipulate them by asking them to bail her out for the sake of their granddaughter. However, Phil told her that it was time she took responsibility for her actions and that they were done protecting her. While Mill is deeply saddened by what's happening to her daughter, she knows that forgiveness is not an option. The police found proof that Kayla had poisoned my meal in an attempt to hurt me, which instead resulted in harm to her own husband. She faces multiple charges, including endangering life, causing harm, and tampering with food. Throughout this, she tried to shift the blame to me, claiming I was the one who caused Jamie's suffering. Luckily, Jamie is resolute in holding her accountable. Her trial is coming up soon, and I doubt she'll be able to avoid justice this time. As for me, my son and I are doing fine. When people ask about Kayla's actions, our son remains unaware. We plan to tell him the truth soon, though it will be a tough conversation. My husband and I have discussed it, and we agree it's necessary for him to know, so he can avoid situations like this in the future. I've been having regular ultrasounds every 2 weeks, as advised by my doctor, but we're keeping the baby's gender a surprise. Given everything with Kayla, my parents have been more protective, urging me to seek counseling. They're worried about the emotional toll this could take on me during the pregnancy. I agree with them as I now have a deep aversion to any food that could be tampered with. I can't bring myself to eat anything that isn't prepared by me. Hopefully, my husband will help me overcome this irrational fear, as he understands and supports me through it. Update 4. It's been 8 months since I last updated. Kayla is now in prison. She was found guilty on all charges, though I never attended her court hearings. My in-laws have kept me informed, telling me that Kayla admitted in court to years of jealousy toward me. She confessed she'd always dreamed of one of her friends marrying my husband. When he started dating me, she became resentful and harassed me because she didn't want anyone else to marry her brother. She grew even more jealous when we announced our pregnancy at his birthday party, as she had also planned to reveal her own pregnancy after a previous miscarriage. She felt we had stolen her spotlight, and the rage from her hormones led her to poison my food. She explained that her intent wasn't to harm the baby or me, just to get me hospitalized. She pleaded for a reduced sentence, claiming that she never expected me to give Jamie my plate. Of course, the judge rejected her pleas. Kayla was sentenced to prison, and she'll be out of our lives for quite some time. Jamie, too, is finally free. He's divorced her, and we've been keeping in touch with him and including him in family events whenever we can. When we spoke, he assured me it was never my fault, and I apologized to him repeatedly for handing him the poisoned plate. I've spent so much time wishing I could go back and change things, so that he would never have been hurt. I couldn't hold back my tears. Jamie is doing well now, which makes me happy. As for Harry and me, we're blessed with a beautiful baby daughter. Her presence has brought light into our lives, even though the shadows of the past still linger. Our son, Nate, is overjoyed to be a big brother, and he's been nothing but loving and caring toward his little sister. Watching them bond has made us appreciate everything so much more. My parents and in-laws have been there for us, supporting us every step of the way. Thank you for following our story. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.